Okay, hold
She's
on.
in. She says she's in. Yeah.
Oh, that must be the 650 number.
Yep.
Okay. Hey, Nisa, is that you?
I'm Sandy. Yep, I'm in.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, Strange is not letting me. Okay, it's not letting me add her. Oh, shoot. Okay, I don't know why it won't let me make her a panelist, but
That's fine.
okay. I think it's okay, right?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, and it is recording, so we're ready to go.
Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll call the meeting to order at 3:41. May we have the roll call?
Larry Klein,
Present.
Mariko Sayak,
Here?
Chappie Jones,
Present.
Margaret Abakoga is absent, and Nisa Flegger.
Here.
Great.
Okay.
We have a quorum.
Good. Okay. And so first up on the agenda is a closed session report. So this was in pursuant to government code, and I can't remember the government code, for the annual review of the executive director. Nothing is to be reported. So that is that. There were no actions taken and nothing is to be reported currently. Consent agenda. Did anyone have any changes to the board meeting minutes as published?
No, so I move that we approve.
Second.
Thank you. May we have a voice vote?
Larry Klein,
Yes.
Mariko,
Aye.
Chappie,
Aye.
and Nisa.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
All present. That's fine. Okay, next up is the discussion and update on ongoing projects. First up, the planning collaborative and what the next steps are. Andy?
So is Rob still on the phone?
Yes, he
No.
was. Oh,
He was. Oh, he got off. Okay. Well, so the planning collaborative, just wanted to let you know that as we're coming to the end of kind of the 6 months project, we've been looking at how to continue funding it. And we had hoped that we would be able to apply for a REAP grant, but ABAG has not, they haven't established the criteria for the new grants. And so there's no criteria, you can't apply for the grant yet. And they haven't decided how much money is going to be available. So with that being said, SCAPO met, because SCAPO and the planning collaborative are mainly the same people. SCAPO met without the consultants there, and I attended as well. And no one spoke against the collaborative. It was pretty unanimous that they want to keep the effort going, moving forward. And so the consultant has given them some different options about how much it would cost to fund it. And so what the community development directors and the planners that are attending the planning collaborative, what they're looking at is using their LEAP money just to shave off a little piece of it. Maybe at first they were talking just $10,000 every jurisdiction, but today I went back and forth with a consultant and we tiered it a little bit. And so the maximum amount of money would be San Jose at 18,000. And I think the lowest amount of money is maybe 6,000 or 7,000. And so, so that is what they're looking at doing. The city managers in attendance at a few of the city manager meetings had indicated that they would be amiable to using a little piece of their LEAP money to continue the collaborative work.
okay.
So it also to let you know, it's not taking up very much of my time. I do little brief check-ins with the consultants. Most of the time they're really short, 5, 10, 15 minutes. And then I have attended a few of the planning collaborative meetings and the SCAPO meetings, but I don't even attend all of them. So there's been some questions about they want to have their own, they want to have a new website, and I'm just going to let the planning collaborative folks figure it out if they need a new website. I don't know why they can't use ours, but I don't know. I'm not going to fall on my sword for that.
As long as they don't make you do it.
No, I just thought it was kind of silly when our website actually has a lot of bandwidth in it that,
Right.
you know, it could have its own like department page. But the county has just been a little concerned. We're going to talk about a letter later that while we have a memorandum of understanding with the county, they're just worried that they're not a member of the cities association. And so like they're worried about a letter that we're going to sign, and they would like to be more of a part of it, whatever we do.
Okay. And that's fair, I think. Definitely they have a vested interest to make sure that, the cities are doing something similar, and, that makes sense. Okay. And as
So-
far as next steps,
So next steps, I mean, I'm kind of letting the community development, the planning collaborative figured out how they're going to pay for it. San Jose staff offered to call HCD to talk to them about using LEAP grants for the collaborative, because it's very clear that a collaborative effort can be used. You can use LEAP or REAP, but they haven't, some of the cities have already had their plans approved, their grant applications for LEAP. And so they're calling HCD to find out if those grants need to be amended. And then everybody would adopt similar language
okay.
so that, everybody has the same thing. So it sounds like maybe half have already been approved and half are taking the extension.
Okay. And then as far as ABAG, there's no idea on when they'll be opening up those grant applications?
Not for REAP.
Not for
But the interesting thing is our consultant received a contract with ABAG to be their kind of lead consultant. ABAG is going to offer a lot of the services. They would rather keep them in-house than granting us some money to do it. So they're probably going to have an ADU specialist. They're
Okay.
probably going to have different specialists that will work with all the different types of collaboratives, or they're also going to encourage cohorts of cities of similar size. So San Jose might be a part of a cohort with Oakland and San Francisco. So they're trying to do things different approaches. I have talked to the consultant about when there might be a conflict, and I did call some of our community development directors and ask them if they felt that this would be a conflict for our consultant to also be working for ABAG, and we actually think it's probably going to work in our benefit because they already know what our issues are, and we'll have a direct line to ABAG then that way. So we are keeping an eye on it, whether if there's an issue that we might need to be aware of.
Okay.
Do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say it's actually great news that it seems like there's a lot of buy-in. People are either buying in or they were bought in. Whatever the case may be, it sounds like in existence. So I think that's great news. My question is, when and how are we going to get feedback and input in terms of whatever those positive things that are taking place? Right now, it's kind of a black hole in terms of
what they're doing?
exactly that is, so that when we, like say when we have this conversation a year from now, we can say it was great that we stood up this planning collaborative because here are like the 8 things that were accomplished or that added value. And right now I couldn't articulate that. So I'm just wondering what the
Yeah, and it probably wouldn't be a bad idea if we had a little presentation so that you can see what they've been doing. I can show you kind of, did I tell you that Los Altos Hills joined?
Yes, you did.
Okay, so I think that's
was
a
exciting.
big, that's a big deal that everybody is in.
Yeah.
So what happened though was the planning collaborative, the consultant, they put together some templates for them of staff reports. And when Los Altos Hills saw the staff report, they called me and they said, okay, we'll pay. So I was just going to show you if you want to see real quick. Yeah, I think that maybe I need to figure out a way to give you a little presentation and the whole board a presentation so that you know what they're doing.
Well, like, let's use this letter as an example that you had shared with that. That's clearly something they put together, right?
It is.
Okay.
And
And so walk us through the process. So that came from, like, who's signing the letter?
so the letter is going to be signed by Larry.
Okay.
So by the Cities Association. So we'll have a policy official sign it. The county has asked that they be allowed to sign it as well, because they're not a member of the Cities Association, but they're a member of the Planning Collaborative. So that's why Rob was on the phone. Rob Eastwood from the county is the head of SCAPO, but he's also kind of the key person that we're using to discuss with the Planning Collaborative and all the issues. And so Rob and I talked, and we want to make sure that the county feels like they are an equal part of this. So I said, well, I don't think we have a problem with the county co-signing the letter. And we do state at the beginning of the letter that every jurisdiction is a member of the collaborative. So that's just another kind of funny little thing that we have to figure out. So Supervisor Chavez is willing to sign the letter on her own, but she can't sign it on behalf of her board because her board hasn't looked at it.
Oh.
Okay.
So is that sound okay to you guys?
No,
Yeah.
it does, because I guess when I was reading through the letter, I was thinking, okay, to Chappie's point, what's like a big deliverable? And I know for us, one of them was, as this planning process goes through, we want MTC and ABAC to pay attention to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, instead of individual voices saying you're not doing this, this, and this, if we have a collective voice, that carries a stronger message. And I know that the SCAPO has taken a look at it. And so I'm just wondering, like, there's certain things that still bug me about this letter. For example, it's still, and maybe they've already addressed it, but they take this high general level look at things. They're looking at all these PDA maps, but at what point does local data feed into it so that as we get RENA numbers, they're very realistic? Does that make sense?
Nisa,
Yes.
do you have any thoughts?
No, I agree 100%, Mariko. And that's one of the questions too, even when you look at the Plan Bay Area 2050 draft, where there are a lot of projections and data for the region, but we don't have the details for each of the jurisdictions within those different regions. So I agree with you. That's not there. And I don't know if they're able to give us that data yet. So for example, I mean, an easy one, which was talked about a lot at the last RPC meeting, was the fact that they're projecting a huge job growth in Santa Clara County. And when they started getting a lot of questions about that, then they said, well, it's not all jurisdictions in Santa Clara County. There are other cities that may be bringing up that number versus others, but they don't have those specifics. So then
Well,
how do we, I guess then the question goes to, how do we use this planning collaborative? You have 15 cities and a county to really make sure MTC hears that loud and clear. Like, that's what I'm trying to
I
figure
agree.
out. Like,
I
other than
agree.
products like letters, what else can we do? And that kind of goes to Chappie's point, to utilize our strength in numbers.
I agree, Marika. I know the planning collaborative met with Dave. Can't remember his last name. He is ABAG MPC. He's the one leading the Plan Bay Area 2050. And I'd love to see the output from that meeting, Andy, because the whole point of that meeting was for them to delve into the details, because Joshua attends the meeting and he and I sometimes, communicate directly. He had a lot of detailed questions that I think he was hoping to, and I know what some of them are, that he was hoping to get answered during that one-on-one. And so I'd love to find out if they got the details that they were looking for at that meeting. So I agree, Marika. Like, they have to get the information we need. It requires these one-on-one meetings. I know the planning collaborative did that either 1 or 2 weeks ago, but I don't know what the results are to say we have this more specific data for a region.
Okay.
And that's their role. I agree. I think that is their role, to do that analysis, and they have the expertise.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So, but I'm hearing what Chappie wants is Chappie wants to know like what they're doing and what the successes are. He wants it to be tangible. And Mariko, you're also saying that the letter is something tangible that we're doing, but also so are you looking for more presentations from the planning collaborative, or am I reading too much into this?
Well,
If I may, for me,
Go ahead.
yeah, just to add to it. So, and it's demonstrating, and I mean, I think it actually ties in with what Chappie is asking for. It's the result. They're doing all these things, and I know they are, but how are they representing us, and what is the success or the result of that? What are they able to learn or analyze that we don't have our fingers on that can help us make decisions?
Right. I think that's it. Like, if they were able, if at this meeting that happened recently, they were able to get the data that each individual city has been trying, that's a huge success. And so that
would be huge.
Right? I would agree. Like, that's something that they are able to take from and offload from the cities. So I guess I'm looking for more of that. What's the value added each step of the way? Because we realize there is a value added, but if they could articulate it as we're going through the process, that would be helpful.
So Rob has joined us, and Rob, I'm going to put you kind of on the spot here. We were just talking about the planning collaborative, and we're not talking about the letter yet, but we're using the letter as an example of kind of a success. But we are just hoping that we can use the planning collaborative as maybe Mariko can say that again.
As a mechanism to really make sure our voices are heard.
And we're hoping, and we're just wondering, I know that the planning, the community development directors and all the planners, feel this is more of a technical, but our electeds are hoping that we can use this technical work to help them as well make better decisions, and also to represent our communities better. And so do you feel like that we're headed in that direction with the planning collaborative, Rob?
Hi, this is Rob Eastwood. I'm the planning manager for the county. Can you hear me? Just one.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. And sorry, I popped in, so I didn't hear all the context and background.
Well, we were just talking, I was just giving them an update about the planning collaborative and how we're running out of money and how we're trying to fund the collaborative to continue. And I told them that people had been supportive of the effort for the planning collaborative, and nobody, I think I heard all the jurisdictions say they wanted to continue. And so we were just talking about next steps.
Right.
And so we're just kind of wanting to hear from from the planning collaborative and you with SCAPO of like, are you feeling that the staff feel, the technical folks all feel the same way about this, that it is good and will
Yeah.
help?
Yeah, got it. Yeah, it is new. I mean, we're not used to this and working in this fashion. And I know there's an institutional history up in San Mateo for years. So, I mean, it's been my observation. It took a couple meetings for the directors and the representatives to kind of understand the intent. But my impression, we had a real good discussion at SCAPO on the value. And I think through the services they provide, it hasn't been a long time, it's been a couple months, how they brought us together, how there's an economy of scale in the work they do, how these consultants can serve as an extension of staff, how there's a lot of crossover. I heard from everyone, they see the value, and there was no opposition from the directors. And, we're at the sort of the professional recommendation technical level, no opposition to continuing. And I think everyone saw the value in that. So I thought that was great. I mean, again, it's hard to grasp sort of new concepts and working together in this way. But I thought it was great to see just after a few meetings that the light bulbs are going off and everyone has seen the value in this. And so I, again, heard no opposition, and I think from every jurisdiction that was represented at our SCAPO meeting on Wednesday, everyone wanted to continue the collaborative.
Hey, Rob, what can you articulate what the value that they're seeing in the process?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a couple. I mean, yeah, I know. I'm not sure if you talked about the letter yet. I mean, that by itself was great, just to get represented voices in one letter that sort of has collective political support for the South Bay. But putting that aside for a second, at the professional kind of technical level, this housing work and the housing element work, it takes a lot of work, and a lot of the jurisdictions have to spend a lot of money on consultants. And so the economy of scale with these consultants is they can do a fair amount of that groundwork that's shared between all of us. So you spend less on staff time and on consultants. Some of the really tiny jurisdictions, they have really no bandwidth on staff to track legislation, to work on a lot of housing programs. So they outsource it to consultants. And what I heard, and this went from Monte Sereno to, even all the way up to San Jose, which is at the other end of the spectrum, is by economizing scale and us investing this amount of money, you just get back from these consultants, knowledge on legislation, basic housing policy ideas, basic housing recommendations that's consistent in any jurisdiction and affects us all. That just helps them all approach housing, RHNA, and the impending housing elements we have to do in a much better way. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, yes, it did.
So Rob, a follow-up. This is Nisa. Hi, Rob. So a follow-up to Chappie's question. So what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like a lot of theoretical value. Because everything you're saying, I agree. Having a group to play that role would be very helpful, and I get the economies of scale. But have they started doing any of that for any of our jurisdictions that we can point to say this is what they have done? And two, were you at the meeting with the Plan Bay Area 2050 representative Dave? I know he met with the Planning Collaborative. I'm curious what that meeting was like and if there were any results or outputs.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the details of that. I just don't have my notes in front of me for that meeting. I'm sorry. I mean, for products, I mean, one thing that helped, the Baird Driscoll folks came and gave a nice legislative overview. I mean, some of the bigger jurisdictions, I know San Jose does and the county does, we can track this legislation easier, a lot of housing bills, but the tiny jurisdictions and the smaller ones can't, and just understanding what's in those was super helpful. we're all still dealing with ADU issues, and I know they've brought some sort of products and recommendations on ADUs. They stepped in on COVID. That was kind of a pivot. Once we went into COVID and shelter in place, and that wasn't in the work plan. But for a meeting or two, they were really good at sort of collecting shared information and concepts and recommendations on how we provide the planning and building services under COVID, which normally, you'd figure out, but you don't have that conversation between jurisdictions. So yeah, I think a lot, there's been some products, I'd say not a lot. And it is more theoretical at this point, but I guess my impression is even just through the products we've seen, and that, I think they see the value and the value continuing, if that helps.
Hey,
No,
Rob,
that's very helpful. Go ahead.
just one additional question. So this is called a planning collaborative. And so I'm just trying to get an idea, has there been any collaboration between jurisdictions, or is it mainly right at this point just input and data coming from the consultants to the various jurisdictions?
Yeah.
Have you seen collaboration, brainstorming?
Right.
Anything like that?
Yeah, the one is this, I'm not sure if you've gotten to the letter yet, but the letter was, and I thought that came together really well. I mean, we talked about it as a group. We created a subcommittee, had about 4 representatives. So big kudos to the Mountain View staff. They came out with the initial sort of draft tag, some of the text, and then the consultants went off and drafted a letter, brought it back, and finalized it. So that, I thought that was a great example of collaboration, using consultants as an extension of staff, and collaboration between jurisdictions to get to ideas that, and policy recommendations, shared values, things like that we all agreed upon. So that was probably the best example so far. The rest has mostly been kind of data and comparison, but not to the level of I'd say collaboration in that aspect.
No, that's a good example. Thank you.
It was a little bumpy for a couple of months.
What isn't?
I know. Mariko, do you have something? No.
Anything else? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Since Rob is here, do you guys want to do the letter
Sure.
and go out of order? Is that?
We'll
Is that
jump
okay?
in. I need to pull hang on.
I'll pull it up.
I got if you could. So we will hold off on 5B, and then we'll move on to the collaborative letter, which is.
Hold on, I've got it.
And
here.
Larry,
Yep.
Larry, can you hear me? I shared with Andy that I have to drop at 4:30, so I don't know if you need me for quorum for any of the other items. Because if that's the case, then it'd be good if we did those before 4:30.
You still have a quorum without Nisa.
Yeah, we still have a quorum.
Oh, we do? Oh, okay.
I don't
Okay.
think I don't think we have any motions after that. It's just discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Are you seeing the right screen?
We're seeing August 10th.
Yep. Okay, that's it. Okay. So this is the letter. And I don't know if you've all had an opportunity to read it, but the letter needs to be sent next week. I mean, another option is, I don't know how we want to sign this, if it's Larry and someone from the county. We could, if I can get responses from everyone, it could be a full
I think
association, and then the mayors again, and then Supervisor Chavez. I mean, there's all sorts of options.
I don't know, I would, as opposed to create a lot of extra work, I'm fine doing it myself and Cindy and just leaving it at that. You know, I think I did read through it and it seemed fine with me. So
Okay.
I think it's, you know, it looks good to me, and you know, I think time is of the essence, although I'm sure we could probably get all 15 mayors to sign on.
They have asked us to send it to each of the cities as well, and some of the cities are already working on their own letters.
Okay.
But I think that if we can provide this as a template, that there will be other letters that will be sent as well.
Sure.
Andy, remind me, when does this have to be received?
Rob, it's by the
August
11th.
10th. Yeah, August 10th.
Okay, thanks.
So Monday. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't leave us much time. So to get 15, well, you could do
Yeah.
you already have the signatures, but to round up all those people, I think is difficult. So I would, in my opinion, it's just myself and Cindy, and we can say it's from the Cities Association of the 15 cities, and that's good enough.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion? Do you have any changes?
I had no changes.
Okay.
I'm ready for a motion.
So moved.
Second? I'll second that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you.
Since I'm the one seconding, or since I'm one signing,
My
I'll second
motion
that.
died.
I thought, no. I thought you
Wow.
said, I'm sorry.
I thought he was seconding it too.
That's fine. I'm seconding that. Okay.
Okay. So a vote?
Yes, please.
Larry Klein,
Yes.
Mariko Sayak,
Yes.
Chappie Jones,
Aye.
Nisa Flagler.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. The motion passes 4-0 for those present voting aye. Rob, are you still here? Oh,
Yes, I am.
so you can, if you want to send an email to the list and let them know that the letter was approved.
I will do that. Great news.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you. And thank everyone on behalf of the executive board and the electeds that we appreciate this.
Will do.
Okay.
Thank you,
Excellent.
Rob.
Thanks.
So that was item number 6. So we'll go back to item 5B, the roundtable, and a discussion of the adopted budget and the action to reduce legal counsel.
So the roundtable met last month, and they adopted their revised budget. And their budget they had a 26% reduction in membership.
Andy, stop sharing if you can.
Oh,
Actually,
sorry.
in a
Oh,
really weird state too.
What? Sorry.
That's
Is
fine.
it- Oh. They had a 26% reduction in membership, so a 26% reduction in their revenue received. They did have some carryover. And so I presented a budget for them. They amended the budget proposal, and the budget, I had, in order to continue work with the consultant, you may recall that that you had agreed that Mary Lynn and I would work with the consultant to approve a scope of work and a budget to present. The roundtable members approved a budget, but they reduced by half the amount for legal counsel, and there wasn't much money in for legal counsel anyway. It was pretty bare bones, and it was about $9,600. They reduced it to $5,000. And they also asked for the contract to be changed and the scope of work to be changed, eliminating references to Cities Association and executive director, and also noting that policy decisions are made, policy and technical decisions are made by the roundtable. And so I wanted to make sure that you knew I am concerned about their unwillingness to have legal counsel. They said they don't need it. And they also did not believe, some of the members did not believe that they were required to abide by the Brown Act. I've also had communication that they don't believe that their personal communications when discussing roundtable business are public records. And then during the meeting, after they said they didn't need legal counsel, they made a lot of requests of Shantine. And so I'm concerned about our fiduciary responsibility and the ability to help them without them having adequate legal counsel. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that. And I'm also would like Shantine to discuss about us changing the scope of work. I mean, the contract with the consultant is with the Cities Association. It is not with the roundtable, because the roundtable is not able, they're not a legal entity of any sort. And so they can't sign a contract with the consultant. And so I am concerned about that. They also alleged multiple times that I am setting their agendas and that I'm making policy decisions and taking those policy decisions away from them. And that is, there's nothing further from the truth from that. That is just not accurate. So I wanted you to know that. Shantine, do you want to say something about the contract, about us changing the scope of work?
Sure. I had flagged a concern when we were having the discussion that that contract had been executed and that it also was with the Cities Association and not the roundtable. And then they moved to make certain changes. Ultimately, if the consultants are fine making those changes and the Cities Association are fine making those changes, it can be done. But my concern is sort of reneging on a contract is problematic. Just basic principles of upholding what has already been established. So they don't really have the purview to do it. The Cities Association's role is as fiscal agent, but also Andy as program manager has the ability to assign and delegate to staff. That includes assigning relevant budgetary or fiscal limits to staff. And so, that really does come back to the Cities Association and your guys' ability to ensure that the budget is being used appropriately. As if obviously you have a fiduciary duty, so it is your liability, but also obligation and responsibility to make sure that the funds are being used in an appropriate way. And so I know that Annie's concern, or one of them, is that if she's not on top of these things, that those budgets can blow up. She has been monitoring them. She has been inserting herself where appropriate, not to, revise policy or to set agendas, which I'm aware, and I haven't seen any evidence of that, but to just make sure that things are being run and not raising consultancy's budget, certainly not raising my budget. We're keeping it pretty minimal. We've also, for both Cities Association as well for any work with the roundtable, have set flat rates. So there was not going to be any potential for going over budget for council. And it was also pretty limited in time. Of course, that's up to you as the client, how much time you want to allot. But my bigger concern was the fact that a contract had already been made, and then there was attempts to renegotiate after it had been executed, which is certainly concerning.
And thank you, Shantine, for that. Definitely, I think that having legal assistance is important. And Andy, you made reference to that they had a certain number of questions for legal counsel after that budget change. So what kind of questions were they? I haven't watched the meeting from that standpoint. Shantine or Andy?
Sure, there was a number of Brown Act questions. One of the issues that came up after the discussion of the budget was at least one member stating that she did not believe that the roundtable was subject to the Brown Act, which in itself is something that I need to address. Fortunately, several members of the board did immediately chime in and say, no, that isn't accurate. But that same member had discussed that she's very well versed in the Brown Act and didn't feel that my involvement was necessary. But of course, making that statement, I think, speaks otherwise. The contract issue also came up after the discussion of the budget. And so that was a thing that I had raised. They asked me directly whether it was okay or not to revise the budget. And I, of course, cautioned them. As counsel, sometimes you have to give your clients news that they may not want to hear. And it's ultimately up to them if they want to follow it. But you know, my role is to make sure that the parties are protected. And so, you know, that was certainly something that I wanted to chime in on. There was a few times where public comment was skipped prior to a vote, at least once during this last meeting, but that has happened before. And so I needed to raise my hand and make sure that was fixed before they had moved on and maybe violated the Brown Act. There may have been a few other things, Andy, if you recall, but those are the top.
They making motions during public comment. Most of it is Brown Act related. But then
Yeah, I'd say that's accurate. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I know we hired you, Shantine, because we were nervous about Brown Act violations. Are the majority of them during only public hearings, or are there things occurring afterwards, non-meetings that we should be worried about? And the context of that is, if they cut your budget in half, does that mean they're meeting less?
My understanding is they're meeting as many times as they're meeting, and that my role would then be reduced in terms of outside counsel. So outside of those public meetings is what it seemed like to me. It's a little unclear how it will pan out, but it did seem like something's got to give, really. I mean, either my participation at meetings, which they didn't seem to want to reduce in terms of how many they were having, or my ability to answer questions or address issues that come up in the interim between, you know, the interstitial period between meetings. So there have been concerns about serial meetings. There was a concern about, as Andy mentioned earlier, making sure that public records are actually shared, you know, whether or not they go to a person's public or private server, if the nature of the correspondence is public, which you all know, it's subject to being public record. And so that was an issue that came up that we had to address, that I discussed with Andy, and she was able to send out, you know, she knew the issue, but she wanted to clarify and make sure that council was aligned, and I certainly was on that. The serial meeting issue has been ongoing. So conversations between persons forming a quorum, either of the larger roundtable or of the smaller bodies, while not at public meetings, and then, you know, making deliberations, decisions that are then reflected in those public meetings is a concern. And there was an issue with the assignments to the subcommittees that has since seemingly been addressed. So they did diffuse the issue by making sure that there were no overlapping members on the subcommittees, which in itself is not a problem. What was happening was that it was one subcommittee was neat, and because they had overlapping members, it would form a quorum of the other subcommittee at the same time. And that other subcommittee notice had not gone out for a meeting. So there were concerns about ensuring that the public was being notified when certain subcommittees were meeting. And that, like I said, has been since resolved, but was a product of my work with Andy and making sure that that was something we could address. So there are issues that are, like I said, between the meetings.
And the roundtable members seem to be upset that I went to the executive board and Mary Lynn, the chair, to ask to spend funds for an attorney for this advice, because as staff, I didn't want to get in the middle of it, because reassigning the committees may have looked political. And so that was the case, but now because we've done it, they've made it political. And that was by far and I stated to them in the meeting that we were trying to do this in the fairest way possible so that it didn't seem political. And because that's not my role. My role is just to make sure that, and Shantine's role, our role is just to make sure that we're following the law. the intent.
So next one, and then I'll drop it. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing that they're redoing the scope of work and they're removing us from it, because we've already asked them to develop an exit strategy.
Mhm.
And so could this just be a way to begin that exit strategy? Like they could write in who their project manager and fiscal agent will be next year. Is that, can we
Except
just
it needs,
kind of push it in that direction?
except that I believe that it needs to reflect what is currently happening.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the issue was it was less forward looking and more of a revision of things that were already occurring. So, you know, we certainly have been encouraging them, I think, to look ahead and plan these things out as Cities Association may, you know, eventually disengage in some way. But the current scope of work and the current, you know, plan had already been adopted. So it wasn't really that it was a problem for them to want to be more independent. It was just a matter of having those changes done for things that are already occurring that had been approved, and not, you know, I think not maybe fully understanding that, again, the Cities Association does have that budgetary right with respect to the staffing and obviously how your funds are being used, or their funds are being used. So great question. I think going forward, that's absolutely something they should do. It was more this particular contract that was a problem.
Okay.
Does that make sense, Andy?
Yeah, what I had a problem with was that Mary Lynn the chair approved the scope of work and the contract, and then she voted against it. And so that's what was even more troubling to me, was because the executive board had asked her and I to work on it together, and we did, and we worked with the consultant, and then she voted against it. And so I'm a little, I'm just struggling with what the right thing to do is. I really would very much like them to, you know, they want to be independent, let them be independent. But we have a fiduciary responsibility as the Cities Association. It is in our, you know, we are the ones that are handling it. And so I don't think that we can just cut a check for them and let them do whatever they want. That doesn't ring as a way to be responsible for. I mean, their budget is larger than our budget.
No, but we can hand them off to a different fiscal agent.
Yes, I would be happy to do that.
And I think wasn't that the direction we asked, is like, and we gave them, granted it's August, we gave them till just the end of the year
to have a plan. And so this is the question. In the short term, you know, it looks like they do need some, you know, some oversight and some legal assistance. What was the plan, you know, from setting up a new basically structure? Is that you, Shantine, or is that someone else that they were planning to bring on, you know, from a project standpoint? Do you know?
Well, remember they made a point that they wanted to hire their own people at the last meeting.
Right. The other thing was that we also, I believe, told them that we would share all the information that we have that we're going to talk about in a minute about organizational status,
right.
And that we would share that with them as well. So it sounds like, so I just want to make sure, if we think that they may be going, I would just like to make sure that I am able to use Shantine, and I guess I'll just use their cut in budget to use her till the end of the year. I
guess my concern is, since we're the fiscal agent, if they continue to do Brown Act violations, who's in trouble, them or us, or both?
Well, it could be both, because obviously your role is in fiduciary in nature. I think it would maybe come back to the type of violation. I think, generally for Brown Act, as I'm sure you're all aware, the first step for anybody who alleging a Brown Act violation is to write to the particular body from whom they've seen a violation and ask for it to be redressed in the appropriate way, depending on what the violation is. If it seems to be endorsed, I think, by the Cities Association, by failure for the Cities Association to address it, then I think it could infer back. I think that's a little tenuous, but I wouldn't say it's that tenuous. I think it's very possible. Ultimately, my job, you are my client, is to look out for you and any potential liability. So to the extent that there are these Brown Act violations, I would want to step in at the first, first sound of it, to make sure that you don't have any kind of liability that might extend up to your organization or potentially further. There could be a concern about the cities as well, from whom the members come and sit on the board. So that it's hard to say in the abstract, but it's certainly not impossible for liability to extend to the Cities Association.
Okay.
Okay. So definitely it looks like at least having some oversight or review, and whether or not, was there talks about them using their own legal counsel from the cities for additional support, or, that's always an ongoing question about whether or not they're actually pulling them in, or whether or not they'll say, well, we'll refer to them. But, for like a Brown Act, in my mind, from a council standpoint, and most of the people, at least that I see, are on, Cities Association as well as the roundtable, are longer term council members and should at this point have a good understanding of the Brown Act. And so it's a little disheartening to hear, the concept of, that's a possible Brown Act issue.
Right. Andy probably knows better. I can say that I met recently with the city attorneys just to be a resource to them. And so that was a nice, productive call. Some people had mentioned that they really hadn't heard much about it. But it was a very brief interaction that I had. It was largely just to say, I'm here, I'm working with the Cities Association as well as the roundtable. If you have questions either coming from our team members or you're just generally concerned, please reach out to me, because I would love to be that voice and maybe pass along information. But I don't know if they've been working in any official way with their city attorneys. I just know that I'm sure they're using them as a resource, though, to some extent.
Right.
I'm right, Andy.
Okay.
I did hear that a member was calling around asking if their attorneys would, I know that a few jurisdictions have been approached if their attorney would. I've heard back from staff that conversations have happened, but
and if I could just say, I think there's not necessarily a problem with that. I think the point of, if I can just make this pitch, the point of outside counsel is that I don't have any kind of conflict of interest to concern myself with, because you're all my clients. So it's very nice. And so I think that gives a lot of flexibility, both to what you guys can say to me and make it attorney-client privilege, and we can have those kinds of conversations, but also because I don't have to, juggle potential conflicts that might arise between the jurisdictions. So that part I think is fantastic to have an outside counsel, and that's, me or otherwise, but I think that really makes it of value. And hopefully that the roundtable, if they do go forward and they do get their own attorney, has a similar perspective, and that they look for somebody who wouldn't also be conflicted out in certain ways, because I think that will be very limiting for that attorney.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So Andy, do we need to make a decision at this point, or what's?
well, I would like to know, I will just plan on using the $5,000 that they cut the budget in half for attorney. And so I am just going to expect that I will use that money, until the end of the year.
Yep.
And because of feasibly that they should be coming back to us at the beginning of January with their plan. And then, but I'm uncomfortable with a lack of being able to use council. And I would, if you're uncomfortable with that, I would hope that maybe there could be a message back to the roundtable, or if you would like to take a vote about that. I feel like I'm out here a little bit by myself. Shantine and I are like hanging out.
So Andy, a question. So is your desire also for us to draft a letter to the roundtable saying that we're concerned that there's a Brown Act violation and we want to put you on notice? Is that the direction you want to go in as well? To
A letter would be great if they would, just to respect that we have a fiduciary, reminding them that we have a fiduciary responsibility, I think is the most, and that the reason that why the cities association is going to have council now and why the roundtable should have council. That would be great.
yeah, because that would put something in writing, very formal. And we could also reference again the Brown Act issue as well, so that they have that in writing, that they're on notice that that's something that we've observed and is a concern.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And
actually, I think that's a great idea, because then it also, should they do something stupid, at least we have a trail that we're trying to address this.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And would you also like to include the reduction of not having legal counsel, the budget for legal counsel? I mean, it was a bare bone budget anyway, or do you not want that as part of the letter?
So
Well,
you're
if I-
saying, position is like, we're concerned that you're not allocating enough funds for adequate legal counsel? Is that the message?
And that's what I was going to say. It's like encouraging, it's a concern and it's an encouragement to make sure that, they can continue to adjust their budget later in the year.
Mhm.
But it's an encouragement to make sure that there's appropriate resources, and conceivably, it's for our interest, but for their interest too. And if they have, if the response back from the roundtable is, well, we have, the assistant city attorney from this organization, from this city is now going to be in every meeting, then then some of those fears are alleviated. But it's that sort of thing that at least we should, in what you said, Chappie was correct. It's like, yeah, it does provide some sort of legal barrier, or at least kind of a roadmap that we've raised the concern, and you need to be aware of what your actions are. So
Yeah, I think it's a great idea for exactly that reason. I think it puts them on notice, and notice is always fantastic. But it also shows that you don't condone anything that might happen going forward if they don't take your advice. So I think that's a really great idea.
And also I would like a little direction about the scope of work and the contract and changing it. Hold on, I have their actual motion here.
Could we make it so that it encompasses the changes, the forward changes we want them to do? Like if they're going to change the scope of work, could they just do one big scope of work change and then let's end this partnership?
well, they until they have a plan, they can't, the partnership can't be removed is the problem until they have what their next steps are. Yeah, the scope of work is great, except until they've set up whether or not they're independent or the fiduciary, they have another fiduciary oversight, we're it in the short term.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that their motion was to update the scope of work to acknowledge that the cities association is our current fiscal agent for administrative and contract responsibilities, and the elected officials of the roundtable will hold responsibility for policy and technical issues. So that also, if they're in charge of technical issues, that means they're in charge of the technical consultant.
I didn't see it as that way, but okay.
Well, I don't know which way.
Yeah. technical issues I would think would be more, what the policies are, what their stances are on specific flight paths and how they want to lobby the FAA or something of that nature. But it's probably a lot of wiggle room in that terminology as stated.
But you can tell I'm just so frustrated with this.
Yeah.
You are.
I mean, they're working backwards. They're using up money.
Right.
Like, do we just let the money dry up?
Well, that's the question, it's like, especially with fewer members, and how does this continue? And definitely our congressional representatives have wanted this platform there. And especially if there's any changes to the routes in the meantime, I think all of a sudden people would be, interested to have that platform to have a conversation. That being said, if they don't have enough people to run, if they don't have enough people for technical consultants, then what does that organization become? It's like it's a group of electeds that are just sitting around talking and conceivably lobbying, but not having the right experts in the room
Right.
to do that.
So who backed out? I know Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz,
County.
Capitola, Santa Cruz County, and Montessorino.
Montessorino broke the bank.
Yeah, I know, right? Okay.
I don't know what to do about the scope of contract, because if we say, no, you can't change it, then they're going to say Cities Association is dictating what we're doing.
Right.
But
I wonder if it could just be a reminder in that same letter that says, as we, determined as a board, you have this amount of time to become more independent. Until then, we're the fiscal agent, be that what it is. So, I mean, it could just be a gentle reminder of that. And, otherwise, if there are budgetary issues, obviously Andy still will play a role. But you're right that, there is, on one side, we want to encourage them to become independent. On the other hand, there's still a role for the Cities Association until such time. And that's contractual, not just contractual, practical, because they don't have their own bank account. They aren't able to run this yet on their own.
actually, I like that idea. Let's just do that gentle reminder. You have this much money left, do it legally right. Please use the next 4 months to go forward, not backwards.
Plan the transition and whatever technical advocacy you need to do in the meantime.
Right.
But I think, it's in reinforcing that organization to stand on its own, as well as making sure that you have, appropriate legal counsel at your meetings for oversight. Much like, every council meeting we have, someone there from either the city attorney or assistant to city attorney, making sure that we don't put our feet in our mouth. So anyway.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sounds like the bottom line is we
Okay.
want to break up, but we can tell them that it's us and not them.
It's always the best way to do it.
I like that. Chappie, you might have done that too many times you've practiced that. Okay, do we need that as a motion, or can we just, that's the.
Yeah, I need somebody who made the motion, somebody who seconded it.
Okay, I'll move that we move forward in the, in a gentle manner with a letter encouraging them to spend their remaining 4 months in a legally responsible and forward-facing manner.
Second.
Okay. Larry,
Yes.
Mariko,
Yes.
Chappie.
Aye.
All right, motion passes with unanimously with those present.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. I know I think there's too many items on the agenda today.
Yeah. Well, we used a half hour ahead of time, which was part of the problem. Anyway,
Oh.
let's continue.
Okay.
Next item is Cities Association of Santa Clara County organizational status.
Yay!
Yay, our favorite subject.
Andy, you want to take it, or you want me to just launch right
I'm
in?
happy to let you take it.
Oh, yeah, wonderful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So picking up on the discussion at the last executive board meeting about the potential options for an organizational change, whether dissolution and then change or restructuring of the city's association. I've worked with the accountant as well as with Andy to put together, as requested, a timeline or a status chart essentially that could set out the relevant steps that are generally involved with either reformation or restructuring as a 501c4 or a joint powers authority. You're getting down to brass tacks. Both the accountant and I think, as well as Andy, are feeling more positive about the joint powers authority. And that's a number of reasons which I can expel out. One is it will be cheaper. In terms of attorney time, it's about the same. Accountant time is significantly less. I think it's a matter of 30 hours or so. So that's potentially a positive. The bigger issue, I think, is that with the state of affairs, I used to be a federal government attorney, so I did a long time. The concern that the IRS wouldn't deem the organization a 501c4 as is their discretion is concerning. So, we could go through this whole process of setting up a 501c4 and yet at the end of the day still have them say no, which is possible. It's also a possibility to just lose status. You don't have quite the same concerns with the Joint Powers Authority. I know you're familiar with those. So, essentially it's set up, it's obviously registered appropriately with the State Controller's Office, et cetera, but it's a California specific governmentally permitted body that can proceed to do all the things that it appears the city's association wants to do, including lobbying. Interestingly enough, if the city's association became a JPA and then later wanted to set up another 501 entity to do a variety of things, it could absolutely do so. There are a lot of JPAs that have done that, where they have another 501 arm that can handle certain contributions or other types of things, but it doesn't have to be the first step. It also would permit the city's association not to dissolve first, but to simply restructure. One of the larger concerns with the C4 is limiting potential for liability that may have attached over the past years as the city's association has proceeded as an unincorporated association. Both the accountant and I agree that there was nothing fiscally wrong with it, but at the same time, we do think that if the city's association wanted to proceed as a 501c4, it would make the most sense to dissolve as a current entity and then completely reform as a C4 with new bylaws, new articles of incorporation, brand new fresh start so that there's no potential tax liabilities that might attach to the city's association as it is now. Again, I'm not saying that there would be, it would just be a big, it'd be a really nice way to make sure that we cut off any potential assets and liabilities that currently exist so they could go forward as a brand new entity and you guys can do what you need to do. So with that said, the processes are both somewhat lengthy. For both processes, it will take some time to establish, obviously, either articles of incorporation or a constitutional document for the JPA. And both of those need to be fairly robust. I would say the Constitution more so than even the articles of incorporation for a 501c4. And it would require a collaboration amongst the members of the city's association. But as we talked about before, that didn't seem to be a concern that you all had. It seems like there can be great collaboration. And it's not reinventing the wheel is the other thing. Both of them have been done before. We can use existing constitutions or articles of incorporation that are out there for samples, which will reduce my time on it significantly. But projections show that JPA will take maybe about 6 to 8 months to establish. 501c4, depending on the IRS, depending on how backed up they are right now, which is fairly backed up, could take closer to a year or more. So that's another consideration that I just wanted to bring out. It's very hard to estimate what the IRS will do. I have heard that they have been knocking out 501c approvals in 3 months. I also just heard that someone else's organization took 15 months. So that's another reason that I think both the accountant and I are leaning more towards the JPA. And I also just think that it will potentially cut the anxiety of trying to get this established and relying on a third party, the federal government, to grant you all the approval that you need to proceed. The JPA, you don't have to worry about such things. So I'm here to answer questions, of course, but hopefully you guys have the information, the timeline, and can go forward from there, and we'll be working together. We'll make it great. It will be a great collaboration either way. I just want to make sure that you're aware of the limits on both sides.
Great, thank you very much. And as far as a cost difference between the two?
Sure. So I
understand, one of them is if you're dealing with the government, it might take a lot longer.
Right.
But just from like a legal fees standpoint, an estimate.
Sure. So legal fees for the just pure costs. So this is referring to not necessarily my costs or the accountant's costs. For the 501c4, you're looking at probably a little less than $1,000 just in filing fees. For example, the filing fee to put forth one of the establishing documents is about $600. And that's by far the largest amount for the 501c4. The JPA costs, pure costs, are very low. I think I found one registering with the Secretary of State for JPA costs $1. So really de minimis on that. There might be other forms that get filled out, but the actual costs are fairly minimal for both. In terms of budgets for the accountant and for the attorney, it's pretty equal for attorney time. What I looked at, it was sort of my low end estimate and my large end estimate for both, and they both come out to about 35 hours or so. And that's hopefully, some things will take much less time, maybe other things take more time, so I've averaged it out. The accountant will take about 30 hours for the 501c4, and he actually did not specifically budget any time for the JPA. I'm sure I'll have to reach out to him, but in terms of the processes and the steps that have been delineated, there's no official accountant time that's been budgeted. So I don't know his fee rate right now, but for me, for the attorney, it's about the same either way, but the accountant is significantly less for the JPA.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chaffee, Mariko, anything?
No, the flyer that you gave us, it looked like the JPA was the easiest, so you just confirmed that. Thanks.
You're welcome.
So do we need to make the decision today, or is this information only, or what's going on?
Andy, you're on mute.
Slacking. What I would like is, I think it would be great if the executive board could go forward with a recommendation to the board. And I think we've been kind of kicking this around long enough, and that it's time to do something. But that is only if you feel comfortable with the information you've been given.
I think the information actually was very useful and good to lay out the roadmap between the two. So yeah, the only thing was the cost. I think that question will come up. So before it goes, if the motion is to send it to the board with that recommendation, making sure that that's added, because that will that's always the question from an organizational standpoint.
Absolutely.
And is it cost to cities association or a cost to the cities? Like, is this another budgetary item that they need to plan for?
I think it'd be the cities association for setting it up. Yeah.
Okay, so I move we send this to the full board with the recommendation to go with the JPA, and in that recommendation will be a budgetary amount associated with it.
Second.
Andy, maybe we have a voice vote?
Larry,
Yes?
Mariko,
Yes.
and Chappie.
Aye.
Excellent.
We're making this a-
Unanimous. Woohoo!
Yay. Have fun with that, Marika.
Seriously.
Hey, but think, under your presidency, we'll finally have resolved this. So you can say that you've accomplished what 3 or 4 past presidents have talked about.
No, with our luck lately, this will be a Mr. Jones accomplishment.
You're the one that's gonna have to get Los Altos Hills and Monte Sereno on board. So that's your challenge.
That is a challenge.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Okay,
Phew.
hang on. Next up
All right.
is discussion of racial injustice survey.
Okay, I finally, it took a long time for folks to respond, but I just want to show you where all the results came up. Okay, sharing screen. All right, can you guys see that?
Yeah.
The big one is mental health.
Yay.
And then implicit bias training,
Mhm.
equity lens and all that we do, town hall meetings or webinars. So kind of a little surprised about that one. I thought that I had GARE on here somewhere, the Government Alliance for Racial Equity.
Maybe you got cut off.
Yeah, the green on the bottom,
Uh-huh,
explore working with local.
and regional.
Is
Oh,
that it?
local and regional, yeah, that's probably it right there. So 13. So I don't have any specific suggestions, or I wanted to see kind of where, if you wanted me to investigate anything or take this to the board, you want to set up a new committee. Does the executive board want to take this as their, you want to be the committee for this, or what should we do and where should we go?
Well, I think we should socialize it with the board first to kind of get
Okay.
direction.
Yeah. It'd be
Okay.
interesting to validate if this is what they thought. Because did everyone respond? Every city?
So I had 25 responses, and can you see here? Oh, look, 6 people from Cupertino responded.
Okay.
So no, not everyone responded. And Los Altos Hills did not respond. Monte Sereno did not respond.
But you got the majority of the cities. That's actually fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Looks like Cupertino might have skewed some of the numbers.
Yeah.
It is.
And it looks like it was all, well, yeah, I can't tell here, but I might be able to tell.
It'd be interesting. I don't know if you can look at the data to see, did they like move the topics in any
Oh,
way?
I will download it and see if I can tell.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. No.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, it might be interesting to see like an average per city and then put them all together so that you really only, if you get one response from every city, it's kind of equal to the average of the 6.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. Because you really want this on a per city basis as much as possible to kind of look at what's happening at a county-wide.
Yeah, so I'll send you the spreadsheet. So
Yeah, that would be
Cooper, yeah, oh, so it was town hall meetings or webinars with the Police Chief Association. That was one of them, and Cupertino voted twice on that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, send us the data, but I do think it, send me that and I'll go through it this weekend and take
Okay.
a quick look at it. And then presenting it to the board, we'll add it to our very full agenda for next week.
okay,
I do think, I do think, it's a good topic and we'll figure out what next steps we might want to do, but it's good data, and it's a good reminder, if nothing else, for, you know, what other cities are doing and what your city might not be doing and you should be doing. So,
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, excellent.
good.
Okay, great. I will stop sharing. You don't
And
have
now
to tell me
we'll-
this time.
And now we'll move on to the item 9, the board of directors meeting agenda. So we have a LAC committee at 6. And lots of bills going through the legislature right now, and different priorities and all that. So hopefully they can do something meaningful in their 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Have you talked to Nisa about that at all, or?
Yeah, I have to put an agenda together for her this weekend, and then she's going to look at it and get it back to me. So I'm going over the bills with there's a lot of bills that have been amended and a lot of them that have hearing dates. So and I've been working with staff, and I've been going back and forth with a couple staff that are also tracking. So they've been helpful to me as well.
Okay, good. And then let's go through the rest of the items. The ABAG appointments. And I saw that there's an email from Liz during this meeting that there's some typo. I don't know what the typo was, but
Oh,
she sent out something.
I think she sent a letter of interest,
Oh,
but okay.
maybe there's a typo in her letter of interest.
Yeah,
or-
there was.
Okay.
Yeah, so she asked.
Okay. I didn't read it closely. I just saw it arrived and.
Thank goodness that's not mine this time.
Okay. And then committee reports. So we'll have a LAC giving them, I don't know if there'll be any new letters that they might want to bring forward, but I'll let you and Nisa figure out whether or not
Okay,
that's minutes. Usually,
it's needed.
yeah. Well, I'm assuming is it 5 minutes or 10 minutes? Do we need
Yeah.
to bring forward any letter or anything of that nature? Makes sense. And then transportation.
They wanted to make it transportation night. And so I do not have confirmation. Rod Sinks, the transportation committee, had discussed having an economist make a presentation. And he was from Santa Clara University. I don't have any information. I sent Rod a message and I haven't heard back from him. So I don't know if Rod is out of town or, having a staycation where he unplugged for a week, maybe. So that is possible. And then the Silicon Valley Bike Coalition, and then they wanted to do a cut the commute pledge.
What? So the Bike Coalition, what did they want to present? And I should have asked Shiloh today because the last 2 days have been their bike summit.
It was about that they have data about the way people are Margaret told me that they had some interesting data about people's habits and about changing of transportation.
No, definitely. So I saw a lot of that data in the last 2 days, and there were some very interesting things there. Let's close the loop with Rod first.
Okay.
I don't want to oversize our agenda too much. Definitely, we want to cut the commute pledge because Cindy's been pushing on that
Okay.
for some time now, and I think that will be relatively short. That's here's the pledge and here's what we'd like you to take back to your city. So that should be relatively quick. There'll be some data there on what some of the companies have done as far as remote work until June 2021, and so there'll be some data there and trying to take advantage of what's happened from an environmental standpoint and a health standpoint. I do think that cut the commute pledge is something good for us to publicize, and Cindy, Cindy's been pushing for it, so it's good. I'd be interested to find out, how long the Bike Coalition wants to display or wants to present, and who's going to present there.
I told them that it's typically a 10-minute presentation with 10 minutes of questions.
Okay, that's reasonable, but it all depends on the economist presentation, which
Okay.
you know, it's kind of up to me. It's, we could split this between this month and next month. I know it's depending upon how much
Okay.
time we have for the rest of that, and either do the Economist this month or in the Bike Coalition next month, or both, depending upon how much time we end up at the end of our meeting. But it always seems to be going long lately because, you know, whenever we talk about COVID-19, we end up spending, you know, twice as much as we originally allot. So,
Okay.
and you know, if you hear back from Rod, if you don't hear back from Rod, then we just go with a Bike Coalition for
Okay.
20 minutes and be done with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the Racial Injustice Survey, another 15 minutes, I'll say,
Okay.
approximately, you know, 5 minutes to present the data, and then just having a quick discussion on what possible next steps might be.
Okay. Okay.
Executive Board of Directors resignation. So Manny, as everyone knows, resigned. And one of the things that we can do is appoint. We don't have to appoint someone else to the executive board, but I've reached out and would like to propose to the board that we have Rich come in as an at-large position, and he has accepted that concept. So I don't know if I closed the loop with you, Chappie, but I talked to Rich and I did talk to Mariko, since he's actually willing to kind of, you know, and we talked last year about conceivably who would be added to the executive board, and which Rich was a close second. And he's actually interested in conceivably joining the executive board next year as an appointed person. So I was happy, especially, you know, how vocal he's been in the last few months, and I've just enjoyed working with him, and I think we all have to a certain degree. And so I think he'd be a great addition, and it also helps kind of from a regional standpoint. You know, that's what we keep trying to do, that as much as possible to get, you know, South County and North County and, you know, San Jose, everybody working together. And that the best way to do that is have representatives from those cities as part of our executive board. So, so I think that'd be a 15-minute discussion tops. But
So just to let you know what the process is,
Yes.
the process is that the board is asked to vote on whether they want to fill the position or not. And then if they agree to fill the position, the president is allowed to appoint.
got it. Thank you. Yeah, you sent me that, and
Okay.
it's
So it's just so that we ask a question of the board, do
Yeah.
they want to fill, and let them know that the president appoints.
great. That's perfect. And so do I talk about who the possible potential person is? or
No,
do-
I wouldn't. I would
Okay.
just, I mean,
Sure.
but now everybody knows.
No, I know.
I mean,
But,
I don't think, well,
I-
I guess if they ask you, you can say, do you have someone in mind? You then
Yeah.
can say yes. I mean, that's up to you.
Okay. No, I think it's important to and say that there's value in that. You know, it's a value to have more voices at the table from an executive board standpoint. And, you know, and Rich has been very vocal, you know, earlier this year, and, you know, and for some time on the board. And I think it's a good addition to the executive board. So it's my ask to make of them. If you can make sure that that portion of that option, or basically what's in our bylaws is part of that, you know, is part of that part of the packet. Just make
Yep,
sure.
absolutely.
Thank you. Next. Roundtable.
Do you want a roundtable or a planning collaborative update, or do you want me to give those two updates as part of my executive director report?
Just do the executive director report.
Okay.
I second.
What, you could even include the letter in the packet.
Okay. Great,
That's a great idea, Marika.
great. Okay. Organizational status.
Yeah. So I think it will spend at least 20 minutes on that, I'm guessing,
Yes.
if not a little bit more.
Yeah, Shantine, maybe we can make a PowerPoint just so that and we'll have a little history in it for those that don't know the history. So,
Sure, no problem.
okay, great.
And that,
Okay.
and take that back to the, the beginning of the organization, if you can. I know
Sure.
that, that's
Yeah.
there's something lost there as far as, all of us long before our time, but
Mm.
I do think that at least sets some framework and also reminds people that it's our big anniversary this year, even though I don't see a party coming anytime soon.
Sadly, this next thing when we talk about it can be the party. Put that in there. No, that'll be no problem. I'll make a presentation. I'll certainly loop in some of the history. I think it's like you said, it does inform, I think, the next steps. So
Absolutely.
I'll have something prepared.
Great. COVID-19. I think there's a general fatigue around on this subject. That being said,
I just wanted to make sure you had options.
no, and I think adding it to the agenda, because we never know where, it's a week away. Who knows what happens in the next week, and all of a sudden we need to spend 20 minutes talking. So, a lot. Go ahead.
Would you like me just to create a bullet that says next crisis?
No, because we don't know what that next crisis is going to be.
Seriously.
Yeah, but no, I do think it's important. I think it's always good for, so I know we're having, we don't have as many county health calls anymore. The county has stopped having elected calls, and, the mayors are still having calls with the supervisors once a week, which has actually been useful just to get a few issues out with them in county health. But it's good for, I think it's good for all of us to be in the room and say what the latest issue was, because when the state came in and started closing down Gilroy and Morgan Hill, that line of communication was open, and it's making sure that whatever issues we're seeing in our cities, you might be the only city having this issue, and how can we get through it as quickly as possible. So it's a good 20 minutes and might be more, but I think things aren't changing right now. It's basically we're in lockdown or nominal lockdown, and I don't see anything changing anytime soon, other than the issues with already and not having reasonable data.
Well, how about if I put the COVID at the end in case we
Yeah.
run out of time?
That's a good thing.
Okay. And then you wanted me to add Caltrain.
Yeah.
You want a discussion on that, or?
I think, well, let's do a 10-minute discussion on that. A lot of lobbying, and this will be kicking off, I'll say, the campaign season for November, that ballot measure, assuming, which I didn't hear whether or not San Francisco approved it this afternoon, but I think that the clean ballot measure will be on the ballot in November. And there's been a lot of discussions around that, and it kind of, you can tie it back to transportation. So order it near the transportation section in the meeting.
Okay.
And we'll just kind of flow into it.
Well, Nisa and I were going to do ballot measures next month.
Oh, then you don't need it. Take it out. No,
Okay.
if you already have it on ballot measures next month, I think that'll be
Okay.
reasonable. Although conceivably, we have how many state ones? 19?
Yeah, but we'll just prioritize the most important.
Okay. Just checking. Okay. Yeah,
So-
that's not important then.
So I think that while on paper it doesn't say 2 hours, I'm thinking this is pretty hefty.
No, I agree.
Yes. You're gonna have to run a really tight meeting, Larry.
I will try. Hopefully we'll start, the big thing is, I think our last meeting, we started late because of it just kept sliding through. But I think, in general, we can shorten some of these fairly well, and some of them, I think we've allotted more time than we need. So I think we'll do okay.
As long as you can get some of our colleagues to land the plane,
Yeah.
In fact, I'm gonna get you a little toy plane, and so when someone's going long, you can just-
Oh, that's actually good code. Like, land the plane, Larry, land the plane.
I wonder, can't we get a plane just to come behind you in your backdrop there?
That work.
Well, you know, oh, that would be really funny.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
All right, looks like I've got some work to do.
Yep. No one from the public is here, correct?
Correct.
Yay.
Okay.
And executive director report, anything else, Andy?
No. I think we have, that we're starting our audit. So
Oh,
with the city of San Jose auditor's office does our audit. And so I've been talking to them all week and I have to start submitting information to them. So yeah, they noticed that we've been doing a lot more too.
good. Good. Okay,
That's it.
great.
Well,
Great,
Only 15 minutes late, not too
I
bad.
know.
not bad.
next week. Happy Friday.
Happy
Yeah, have
Friday,
a good
everyone.
weekend, everyone.
Bye.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Okay.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye. See you.